probably haven't heard of, written in a language that doesn't exist, full of diagrams and drawings you can't quite make sense of. It's been called the most beautiful unsolved mystery in the world. But what if it isn't a mystery at all? What if someone just made it up? It's me, and this is my channel. Join me today as we explore the strange tale of the Voynich Manuscript. The Voynich Manuscript is a book unlike any other. It's about 240 pages long, written in an unknown script. It is believed to have been created sometime between 1404 and 1436, because that is when the paper was made. Even the title page has words, but none of them are real. Take a look at this. As similar words sprinkled throughout the book, we can see some leaves and flowers and roots. But what they mean in relation to the text is anyone's guess. Some scholars think it's a record of experiments in alchemy, which was a kind of proto-scientific practice used in medieval Europe. Apart from the people, there are no other humans in the book. All the artwork depicts fantastical creatures and plants and otherworldly diagrams. But there are no people. That's a bit odd, don't you think? Her analysis of the letters told her that the language wasn't actually a cipher at all. Instead, it was just a real language written in a way that made it unreadable. The third part was apparently a training manual for new recruits. Now, we don't know much about Carol's research methods, but it's safe to say that nobody else has come up with a mafia interpretation, nor have they been able to translate any of it. Not a single person has managed to verify any of her results. It seems safe to say that her research was incorrect, especially since we already know the language used in the book isn't Old Church Slavonic. She took the letter frequencies and compared them against natural languages to figure out what it might be. Is this book a genuine mystery or a cleverly executed hoax? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out these other videos. And finally, don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every week. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Their analysis suggested that the book was written in 17th century Italian. However, they also admitted that there was a chance the book was a forgery. And that's the kicker. Her conclusion was that it was most likely Old Church Slavonic, a language closely related to Russian. We know that someone wrote it, but we don't know who, why, what it means, or even what language it's written in. In a few decades, it'll be 600 years old, and the only thing we'll have to show for all our efforts will be a stack of unsolved mysteries. We know that sounds like the plot of a cheesy action movie, but stick with me here. Also, if somebody forged this book in the 1920s, wouldn't they have tried to sell it in America when it was easier to smuggle books across the ocean? The fact that it was sold to a British bookseller in 1922 suggests that it was created long before then. The fact is, this book was created in the 15th century. People in the 15th century didn't have the technology to fake the paper. And if you look really closely at the illustrations, they aren't perfect. They look like they were made by a human hand, not a printing press. They're inconsistent and imperfect and kind of silly. Had a machine run a series of algorithms until it produced a legible page and checked her work against the existing translations. According to her research, the book was talking about medicinal plants. Why wouldn't a book that appears to be teaching some kind of science include diagrams of people performing experiments or making observations? We can assume that the author of the book wanted to share knowledge with others. Well, that's what any instructional book is for. So why hide themselves away like this? Alchemists experimented with turning base metals like lead into gold, but their work often had a mystical element to it, blurring the line between science and magic. Experts from Harvard and Yale have looked at it, along with plenty of amateur sleuths. George Box, a professor at Harvard, said it was the most interesting cryptogram he'd ever seen. Yet even he threw in the towel. It used the glycolytic alphabet instead. Carol's computer program couldn't read the entire text because it was using the wrong alphabet. So she translated the parts that she could into this modern version of Old Church Slavonic. Yet even then, much of the text still made no sense. It didn't describe plants at all. Instead, it seemed to be a manual for, of all things, a mafia gang. One guy called Gordon Rugg spent 10 years trying to break the code. He worked out the basics of what appeared to be 2 alphabets. Then he suddenly died of a heart attack at the age of 80. His widow continued his work and made some progress, but ultimately the code remained unbroken. If we take them all together, we get something that looks like a sentence. 2 diagrams of circles and spheres, and one of the illustrations looks very similar to Galileo's drawing of craters on the moon. The fourth part is the shortest and makes the least sense. It's mostly just diagrams of weird little creatures along with a few astronomical charts. Some people think it could have something to do with astrology or alchemy, but honestly, who knows? When you translate it into Latin, it says, "Turn over the key, open the chest." But these words don't appear anywhere in the text. It was almost certainly written in Eastern Europe, possibly Italy or Poland or the Czech Republic. In the first section, there are some diagrams that look like astrological charts showing the positions of stars and planets. Some scholars believe that it could be depicting constellations. Others believe it's describing a system of geomancy, which is a form of divination that uses the patterns and shapes found in cracked earth or the markings on animals. Either way, this section is filled with symbols that we simply can't make sense of. That much is certain. What's not certain is anything else, illustrated with strange little pictures that seem to show some kind of fantastical plans and other bizarre imagery. It is named after the bookseller Wilfred Voynich, who purchased it in Italy in 1912 and brought it back to his home in the UK. He'd had no idea how or why it got there, but perhaps that's for the best, because if he knew, maybe he would have steered clear. The truth is, this book is cursed. Ever since it came into his possession, bad things have happened to Wilfried Bonk. He was interned during World War I because they thought he was a spy. His house burned down and he developed stomach cancer. She eventually sold it to the U.S. bookseller Basil Henry D. Gray for $125, less than half of what it cost him. For a while, nobody knew exactly where it came from, only that it came from Italy and that it had been found wrapped up in a dirty curtain. It would be a good story if it ended there. A mysterious book brings misfortune to its owner. Discovered that it had come from a place called the Abbey of Santa Maria della Vittoriana in the town of Arezzo. This turns out to be a pretty interesting detail because this abbey housed the records for an order of monks called the Vallambrosani, also known as the Camaldolese monks. They were a splinter group that split off from the much larger Benedictine order, becoming more strict about their vows of poverty and celibacy. Their original monastery was here, but by the 18th century their numbers were dwindling, so this building became a farm and eventually fell into disrepair. That's a spooky story that might even make you want to stop watching this video right now. But sadly, it gets worse. He died in 1930. His widow offered the book to Yale University, but then she had second thoughts and withdrew it. In 1978, however, one of those supermarket tabloids did some investigative reporting. This particular book, though, is a lot older than the Abbey of Santa Maria della Vittoriana. It seems to have been written in an unknown cipher, 5 sections in total, each seeming to have its own unique alphabet. The second part looks like it's talking about plants and botanical medicines, but it's hard to say for sure. The third part of the book seems to have something to do with astronomy. You might have noticed another thing about these illustrations. So far, every attempt to crack the code has failed. But in 2017, a computer scientist at the University of Texas called E.J. Carroll claimed that she had solved the whole thing. That's all well and good, except there was one small problem. Old Church Slavonic didn't have the Cyrillic alphabet, according to her translation. First part of the book explained how to join the organization and how it was structured. The second part outlined its rules and regulations. Researchers at the University of California ran the text through a computer program that analyzes writing styles and historical context. This book is so perplexing and bizarre that it just doesn't seem real. If somebody set out to write a book that baffled scientists and historians for hundreds of years, don't think they would have done such a good job. The truth is, we simply don't know what to make of this book. It has a fascinating story and a great example of how hard it can be to understand ancient texts. But what do you think?